evening, everybody, and welcome to Fire Up Florida. And I am fired up to be with this group of people. And we're talking about Rod Peterson, the architect of Cats and Bolts podcast, is always nice enough to join us on Monday night. First show of the week. Might as well get it started with good old Rod Peterson. Welcome to the big show.
Good to see everybody. Good to be seen. Hi, George.
Yes, and hi,
Hey,
George.
hi.
Right, George Eichel. This guy is a natural. Rod's a natural broadcaster. All right,
I'll
George
tell you
Eichel.
what.
Yeah.
This is good stuff, man. We love our hockey. We love Florida. So let's do it, guys.
All right. Well, you know what? We got a loaded show, so folks. So, any comments and questions in the chat room, we'll get them up. George Eichel's going to read them because my voice has to be preferred for two of these bad boys. But anyways, let's start this way. Tampa Bay Lightning are in for a much bigger change when the Bolts open the 2024-25 campaign at the Carolina Hurricanes on October 11th. It marks the first time since 2008 that they'll be without stevenstamkos, the franchise leader in points with 1,137 and games played with 1,082 as he signed with the Nashville Predators as a free agent on July 1. After being dissatisfied with the Lightning offer for the team icon, Tampa Bay added forward jakeguentzel, 77 points in 67 games last season with Pittsburgh and Carolina, as a means to replace Stamkos, but it's nowhere near a guarantee. Well, the architect of who wrote this is going to lead off. Since we're doing baseball, we're leading off with this topic. All right, Rod, what's your take on this?
Well, my mind went about 18 different directions with that because I still think, and a lot of Panthers fans think, that the Lightning are going to regret getting rid of Stevenstamkos here in the offseason. But I've got Bolts fans and NHL pundits and podcast hosts writing me going, no, Rod, you don't understand. They're rebuilding, and they couldn't afford to pay Stamkos that amount of money. Why would you give an aging veteran that amount of money if you're going to be rebuilding? And I'm like, whoa. Number one, have you ever been a general manager? People that are writing me? No. Number two, I don't think should run a team off a spreadsheet. You know what I'm saying? Stevenstamkos is a heart and soul guy, career leader in games played in points. So what you were reading from my South Florida Tribune column from a couple of weeks ago, right? I guess they wanted to go younger. They gave Guentzel the same amount of money, guys. So I got people saying to me, Rod, you don't understand. They're going younger. They had to get rid of Stamkos. So I'm like, no. Nowhere did the Lightning ever say they're in a rebuild. I feel that people have misread that. They wanted to move on from Stamkos. That's true. But I don't like the way that they did it, and I don't think they're going to be better off for it. What do you think, George?
Oh, I agree. I mean, this is the type of guy. This is a franchise player. This is exactly the fans in Edmonton went through when one Wayne Gretzky was let go. Or in Detroit way back when they let go of Marceldionne. All I'm saying is that I have to agree because Stamkos is a franchise player. He's the heart and soul of that team. I know that Yzerman loved him down there, and so did your other, other previous management figures. But I'm telling you what, once you get into this certain year, I mean, teams get a little bit scary about dishing out all the money, I guess. There's a certain level, a certain age, if you will, that a player, they must feel that they can't get enough back in return. I don't know what it is, but I agree with what you said, Rod. I mean, I don't think that they should have let him slide out. I mean, this is a guy that's kind of the king of the franchise down there. He's got a lot more great years of hockey left. Don't kid yourself. He's going to rack up a lot of points, and he's going to come back and hurt that franchise, of course, when he plays in his new uniform. But that one had my head shaking. I mean, even if Detroit had gotten him, it still would have had my head shaking. But they still lost their heart and soul. I have to agree.
George, let's set the record straight about Marceldionne, okay? Marceldionne let the Red Wings go. They didn't let him go. They didn't want him to go. This guy was racking up a ton of points is what he really was. But Marceldionne wanted to go to L.A., and he did. And I guess he wasn't so enthusiastic about playing in Olympia Stadium, which, with no disrespect, I wouldn't be eating there for your regular dinner. There's not a lot of entertainment around that particular place, and I'm not being sarcastic. If you've ever been there, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But Marceldionne let the Red Wings go, and they had to do what they had to to get suitable compensation. Now, I believe the return on that was Terry Harper and Dan Maloney, is what I remember. So it's not like they went out there and lost the guy for nothing. How about that, Rod? That's a head scratcher, isn't it, pal?
It
Yeah,
is.
Terry Harper.
And by the way, I don't know if you guys know a gentleman by the name of Lou Gamblin, but I had him on my daytime talk show today, the Rod Peterson Show. He hosts a program out of Detroit on the 12-ounce Sports Network. And we did get a Red Wings update. So I'm not going to, we'll save that to the end, his take on the Red Wings for both of you guys. But just to bring this into this millennium about Marceldionne, I saw a question the other day. Who's the current face of the National Hockey League? And there were 4 options. And they were like Connor McDavid, Connor Bedard, Austin Matthews, and I can't remember the 4th. Doesn't matter. And I'm like, when Connor Bedard was coming up in junior, guys, I broadcast his games in Canada. And people were saying, who would you compare him to? And I'm like, I don't know. There hasn't been a guy like this guy since. And a fan wrote me and said, Marceldionne. And I was like,
kidding.
whoa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, built like a D battery, thick and short, right? But shifty with an unbelievable shot. So when you're watching Connor Bedard this year, think of Marceldionne. That's what I think of when you brought him up.
Well, that's why your body language really tipped you. I'm starting to get used to you, Mr. Peterson. I can tell. No, that's good. And so that isn't so bad at all. I mean, Marceldionne, to me, is the kind of guy that I enjoyed watching as a kid. There weren't a lot of things, Rod, that went right during the Red Wings period during the 70s, and nobody wanted to play there. Bruce Norris was I believe it was Bruce Norris was the owner, and he really did have an interest in it until they moved it to Mike Ilitch. But my point when we talk about this particular subject is Stevenstamkos, to me, deserved a better exit from Tampa. He really did. And to guide them and be a part of a few cups is important. But you know what? Here's the thing. He's going up to Nashville. Barry Trotz is your general manager, and Andrew Brunette, the former Panthers coach that you ought to know all too well anyway, is your head coach. It's not like he's going to that bad a place, and I'll be partial toward Bill Wickett, who's been a good friend of mine for years. Go ahead, Ron.
I don't have anything other than you got a very motivated Stevenstamkos in Nashville. I think they're all motivated. All those guys you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And I'll say it again. We'll see. On our Cats and Bolts podcast that we do, a question came up from a viewer. Will both Florida teams make the playoffs in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year? And honestly, I said no. And we got in a hell of a fight over it. Serena and I, my co-host, she thinks they will. I don't think the Lightning recover from this for a long time.
Wow.
Okay. Well, that's why we let off with it. All right, great stuff. All right, well, you know what? We're going to go back a little bit toward the summer. And as we get ready for the season, it's not surprising that, listen to this, 3.2 million people watch the Bruins Maple Leafs Game 7 on ESPN, the largest first-round Game 7 audience in NHL history. I'm going to give you 2 words, okay? And then, Rod, you're next, okay? Original6. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess. It was a hell of a story. I mean, the Leafs and the Bruins have a history just amongst themselves, let alone original 6 teams. It was a tremendous series. There was a lot riding on it. I don't think it hurts that, I'll be honest with you. Do you guys put as much stock in the nationality of NHL players as Canadians do? The fact that Austin Matthews is an American? Do you guys care? Because that's all we talk about in Canada, that Austin Matthews is an American president of the Leafs. Do you care? Or American captain, sorry.
Me personally, I don't, but
I don't either. I don't think it matters to me at all. I don't know, but I know issues are different for Canadians. But yeah, I don't get upset about that.
Yeah.
Well, but I'll tell you one thing, anytime ESPN could draw 3.2 million viewers for a Game 7 for a first round series, and I'm talking ESPN, okay, you have to kind of at least address it a little bit, knowing that you are dealing with original 6. Toronto hasn't won anything, what is it, since 1967, if I remember. Boston wins a lot, so we don't have to worry. And, Toronto doesn't, I don't think Einstein can figure it out, neither can David Copperfield. So let me know, okay, where some of my newest nieces and nephews are going to be by the time they do figure it out. And who knows if I'll be alive to see it anyways. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure.
They're able to get it right.
there was an argument to be made. Some tried to make that these were the greatest Stanley Cup playoffs in history. These last ones in the spring of 2024. I don't know if they were or not, but the ratings were boffo. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Bruins got up 3-1. The Leafs came back to force Game 7. Great storylines. And we saw what happened in the Stanley Cup Final, too. Panthers up 3-0. Oilers come back to force Game 7. So maybe they were the greatest playoffs ever. I don't know. I look forward, not back. But they were good. I'll tell you that.
Well, the other thing I was going to say is it surprises me with that stat from Scott is the fact that the one team wasn't an American team. And I only say that makes it even more impressive that this was highly rated. I know the original six, but also the fact that the Canadian audience, doesn't get counted. Am I correct in those ratings because it's an American rating? I would imagine because it's on American channel. You said ESPN. So all that being said, it makes it even more impressive to me. And yes, those are two great franchises. Holy cow, you can't get much better than that unless you're a Detroit or New York fan or Chicago, whatever. But it was exciting. I have to agree. And I mean, Rod and Scott, those were exciting games. There were a lot of comebacks, and like you said, teams that went the distance, Game 7s, and came back from nowhere, a brink of elimination. So, yeah, I mean, ESPN. Scott, you and I have talked about this. We've known each other for so many years.
Right.
The fact that ESPN was not in the package. But all that being said, NHL, you did the right thing. ESPN is your partner. And that
well, let me add this too, okay? I can't sit here and beat up on ESPN because let's face the reality, all the meaningful games end up on ABC. So you can't say they don't have a national network partner because that is not the case. So you got ABC and ESPN, and that's when they knew where to put the certain games. Go ahead, Ron. I can tell you're chomping at the bit to go and add something to this. Go ahead.
Yeah. The only small thing is ESPN probably announced those biggest ratings ever, but the NHL likes to throw both countries together. So the ratings on Canadian television plus America, just to make the number bigger. And it seems to work because, again, we're coming off the greatest year of NHL hockey. Here's the question for you two. Is it going to get better this year? I think it might.
You know what? I'm going to do what I'll do something I like to do in broadcasting, Ron. I'll give you two ways to look at it. One, TBD, to be determined. And the other one is I'll take the fifth. So, because I really don't know. It really, I think a lot of it will depend on who are the contenders and who are not the contenders, really. And then we'll be able to make that. But I like the question. I really, really do. It's just, unfortunately, you being the guy that asked me the question, I'm giving you the obvious answer that a lot of people will probably give you, and that isn't really a whole lot.
I don't know either. I think it could be. Depends on what the situation goes on and how these teams respond. And there's so many players moving around, like you said. It's a chess match, and the teams that we hope are going to be possibly better, we'll see. And like you said, your prediction, Rod, you think one of the stalwarts, I should say, is going to fall out of the playoffs. That's stunning news. The Tampa Bay Lightning, your prediction. But all that being said, yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard to top last season, no question about it. That could happen, though, but we'll see.
All right, we're going to bring Candy Ebling in here. She has a couple things she wants to share with the audience, as well as we have a station break. So go ahead, Candy.
Okay, let's do the station break first. So if you see the red subscribe button, hit it, like us, share us with all your friends and family. We're talking hockey on Monday nights on Fire Up Florida. Then we talk baseball. Tuesday nights we talk football inside the pigskin. Wednesday and Thursday nights, Sports Exchange and Fire Up, respectively. You never know what we're going to be talking about. The South Florida Tribune published a book last year. It is called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by Scott Motor City Madmouth Morganroth, your host tonight. And then the foreword was written by none other than George Eichhorn, who is also on the program tonight. Get your copy at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google or Apple Books. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to sponsor or advertise, call Scott 954-304-4941. And last but not least, you can go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where you can read Scott, George, and Rod's writings and my pictures. And there's a link to our merchandise store where you can get merchandise as well. Hello, Rod.
Yeah, get all Rod's people ready to go. And obviously, as we continue to move along, Candy isn't done yet. Are you, Can?
No, we have 2 shots we want to put up on the screen. Rod, you can talk a little bit about this one.
Well, that was last Wednesday when I was so rudely interrupted the show to go inside and get the photo with Phil Pritchard there, the keeper of the cup. That was a tremendous night at Cafe Seville in Fort Lauderdale. So, yeah, hey, thank you for throwing that up. What else you got?
And then, because you're not the only one that's taken a picture with the cup, Scott and I, when it was over in Tampa Bay, right, Scott?
Oh, yeah, covering the All-Star game there, so we might as well go ahead and take a shot of undoubtedly the toughest trophy in sports to get your hands, skates, feet on, whatever. So there, Rod, we wanted to make sure we went out there and let everybody know that, you had that opportunity. And I always tell anybody that if you have an opportunity, that you go out there and take it and don't worry about it. And that's exactly what you did. I'm glad you're able to go remote from there. And we just wanted to remind you in the audience that it's real. The man got a picture with Lord Stanley.
Yeah, you guys look like a couple of kids in that shot. But one thing, Candy, hopefully at some point we'll promote tonight is your merchandise. I need a hat and I need a sweatshirt because I would have worn one, maybe both, with Lord Stanley there. So I got to get my hands on that.
Great stuff, Rod. Great stuff. We'll let you know. And by the way, we're looking forward to getting together with you and Serena later in the week. All right, well, let's continue on. Why did I title the show, Who was the NHL's First Millionaire? I'll tell you why. A guy by the name of bobbyorr, 53 years ago, signed the NHL's first $1 million contract. Get this. Orr was coming off a league record 139-point season. In the first year of the deal, Orr won the Norris, Hart, Conn-Smythe, and Stanley Cup. The contract was a 5-year deal worth $200,000. But people, there's a little trivia out there. Bobbyorr, of all the millionaires out there, was on one that you should be thankful for. Okay, Rod, we all know what Bobbyorr is in NHL history, but did you know that he was the first guy that got $1 million?
Well, we talked a little bit about this last week because I remember talking about who's on the Mount Rushmore of the National Hockey League, right? And we said Bobbyorr, Wayne Gretzky, Gordon Howe, and who's the fourth? It's still to be decided, obviously. But do you guys remember, and I don't mean to throw a curveball here, but Dennis Sobchak signing with the Cincinnati Stingers of the World Hockey Association for $1 million right around that same time. He's from my hometown. So $1 million in this $1 million now is a lot of money. I can't imagine in the 70s. People must have been, they must be thinking the same thing back then as people are now with Dak Prescott signing for $60 million a year or Shohei for $70 million a year, even though they're deferring 68. I can't even imagine what people were thinking back then with that amount of money. The fans, I mean.
Don't get me started on either of those two guys.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, you'll have cauliflower ears when I get through with you on those. So, but not one of these days, well, we may talk about it and have a little fun with it. One thing about the show is while we do talk primarily hockey, if I ever see something interesting that we're going to talk about, I won't think twice about inserting it whatsoever. So, great stuff.
I just want to add, Scott and Rod, that, and I said this last week too. If anybody deserved that money, obviously Gordie Howe would have been my first choice. But at that point, Bobbyorr was obviously the head and shoulders the best player around in the NHL at that time. So if anybody deserved that $1 million, boy, Bobby sure did. Great guy, class guy. It's a shame his career had to end early, a la Sandy Koufax. So, I mean, it's just, Bobbyorr is just a class guy. And there is a Bobbyorr museum. I'll put that on my list, Scott, that I want to go see someday with you.
Okay. Yeah, no, that'd be pretty cool. Hey, Rod, George Eichler and I have done a lot together. One of the things we did do together was cool is I took him to the Indy 500 is what I did, and him and I just had a field day. All right, Candy, why don't you put the numbers up there again? So for those of you that are watching and didn't hear me verbally say it, we'll put them up on the screen. Go ahead, Candy, put her up there so they can all see it in YouTube land. George, you get to read it.
All right. Bobbyorr, she says, he holds the record for most points and assists in a single season by a defenseman. Orr won a record 8 consecutive. Can you believe that? Norris trophies as the NHL's best defenseman and 3 consecutive Hart trophies as the league's most valuable player. Wow. Wow, wow.
Heavy duty stuff. But you know
Yeah.
what? I'm not going out there and bringing Regis Philbin back to life, but his show was called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Well, guess what? Who is the NHL's first millionaire? I don't know if my what do you call it skills are
Announcing
very
skills?
my what?
Your announcer skills?
Oh,
Like
yeah,
doing
things all
this?
right. What do they call them? Ventriloquists and all that business? You
Oh, yeah.
imitate somebody? I don't know. I'm trying to remember. But go ahead, Rod.
Impersonations.
That's it. Thank you very much, Mr.
Um,
Peterson. That's the word I was looking for, so I don't have to go to sleep tonight, depending on whatever I get anyway.
Now you can.
What
Now
else?
you
At
can.
that number. Thanks.
But
I
the
owe you
one
one.
thing is the era that Bobbyorr played. Can you imagine if he played now when there's no hitting? I mean, any new fans over the last 10 years don't really know any different. But up
Right.
until the last 10 years ago, when Bobbyorr, I mean, nobody could catch him, right? But now, with the skill and the stick handling and the fact that you can hit, just nobody does. Imagine what he would do now. I had this chat, by the way, with Lanny McDonald in Calgary, where I spent the last 2 summers prior to this one, who's just announced today he's stepping down as chairman of the Hockey Hall of Fame, by the way.
I saw that.
Yeah, Lanny is in the 500 goal club in the National Hockey League, along with Marceldionne. And I said, how many do you think you'd score in today's game? And Lanny's like, it's kind of pointless to even talk about that. Because how would you know? You know, but you can't deny it's a totally different game from Lanny's day and certainly Bobbyorr's day.
Well, then I got a homework assignment for you. Okay, Rod, you ready? Here's your homework assignment for one of these shows. Okay, I want you to give me your opinion. Okay, how you think Wayne Gretzky would have done in the original 6? Would he have amassed the amount of points that he did? We're not going to talk about tonight, but that's what I'd like you to address. You don't even have to give me an opinion. I'm just giving you something you want to do. That way it gives you time to think about it. You don't have to come up with it now. But I like the fact that you talked about Lanny McDonald, about this era versus the old. And that's why you got my wheels turning, Rod, about how Wayne would have done back in the day where everybody was beating the daylights out of each other anyway. My mom once bought me a book. I don't know if you ever got it, but I think it was called Blood on the Ice. Did you remember that hockey book?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got it somewhere here. But anyways, yeah, you won't see much of that anymore, or not that much. So, all right.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
So we'll revisit one topic that I want you to really put your heart and soul in, like you don't anyways, you always do. But we're going to talk about Johnny Gaudreau family. Now his wife is expecting their 3rd child. So let me go over everything with you based on what we're going to talk about. And George and I will be more than happy to comment after you, okay, Rod? And that's this. The accused drunk driver in the tragic crash, that killed Blue Jackets Johnny Gaudreau and brother Matthew worked at a rehab center, and his name is Seanhiggins. He's 43 years of age. As an employee of Gaudreau, which is getting publicity for all the wrong reasons, a nonprofit drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center whose headquarters is in Norristown, Pennsylvania. He's charged with 2 counts of vehicular homicide after he struck and killed the brothers on bikes as they were in town for their sister's wedding on that Friday. And what he ended up doing is he went from behind trying to pass the 2 vehicles. Higgins told police that he had about 5 or 6 beers and obviously then failed a series of sobriety tests. Now, the question I'm going to ask you, well, you can comment in general, but the follow-up question I'm going to give you, Rod, is what type of punishment should he get? Okay, go ahead.
Ooh. Well, there's a curveball for you. Now, of course, I'm original Canadian. Just got my green card in March, so I haven't been down here that long. The punishments in America are far, far, far more harsh for these types of incidents than they are in Canada. Really? So in Canada, he'd be looking 3 to 4 years of vehicular manslaughter. This is a tragedy. I mean, my mind when this happened, went to the Humboldt Broncos crash. And I don't need to remind you guys of that. Semi-driver blows through a stop sign and kills that hockey team's bus, kills 16 people. I believe he's still in jail, but that's a 4, 5, 6-year sentence for killing 16 people. Here, drunk driving, admitting to it. I didn't realize that he worked in a recovery center, and I'm not sure you guys knew. I'm 10 years sober, and I work as a mental health and addiction recovery coach. And 50% of my time is spent on that, if not more. So what's his past history? What's his level of remorse? He doesn't seem to have a lot.
Right.
I'm sure there's hockey fans would like to see him locked away in the key, thrown away. My guess, he's probably going to be looking at 4, 5, 6 years. That's just my guess off the top of my head.
You think Johnny Gaudreau's looking at 4 to 6 years? Really?
The guy that killed him.
I mean, I'm sorry, Seanhiggins. You're predicting 4 to 6 years.
In Canada, it would be. I'm just familiarizing myself with the American laws, which I know are a lot more harsh.
That's okay. Doesn't matter. Hey, listen, you know what? I kept this topic in here. I wanted you to comment on it, and you did exactly that. Okay, George, go ahead. Let's revisit it. All you need to do is ask the punishment part. You already know the particulars.
Yeah, I'll stick with my statement from last week, and I said 20 years for each offense, which I know is astronomical, 40 years. But I'm sorry, what he did, there's no excuse for. There is no remorse, like you said, Rod. This is incredible. I watched part of the funeral online today, and it was the saddest thing I've ever seen. The tributes and the stamina and the commentary from his teammates and his wife and his sister-in-law, and it's just incredibly sad. And this guy, first of all, you're stupid. You are absolutely stupid to get behind that wheel. You never should have. Second of all, who in their right mind thinks they could pass 2 vehicles like that? And it was either dusk or it was getting dark, I'm sure, out. Even so, you don't go trying to pass 2 vehicles on a narrow road like that. Hell, you don't even know what's coming around the bend. It's very hard, as Scott and I know, and you too, Rod, and driving cars and trying to pass 1, let alone 2. But all that being said, this guy he's got to get locked up for a long, long time. And I said last week, and I'll stand by it, 20 years if he's found guilty for each of the offenses. 20 plus 20 for me is 40. Well, I don't want to see him. I don't want to see him again.
Well, at least you know your math. Okay, I'll give you that. But here I want to mention Jennifer Lee Cobb. Great show. Thanks, Jen. She's one of my favorite people, Rod, that I've ever had on here. She's been on the Motor City Mad Mouse show as well as other shows. And the thing about Jen is, I mean, she's a great friend, but she's a person who goes out there and I've had her on shows talk about Parkinson's disease, and making people aware. So you want to talk about a first-class woman. And by the way, she used to be a cheerleader for the St. Louis Rams many years ago. But the thing about Jen, she always works hard to fundraise for Parkinson's disease and awareness. And I've had a lot of people, and actually, she happens to be in my book in Lessons from the Microphone is what she does. So for her contributions to what we've done. So Jennifer, thank you very much for taking a little bit of time out of your Monday to pop in here. We really, really appreciate you. And you know how I feel about you anyways, but it is what it is. So George, Rod, there's some great people out there. This lady, Jen, she's unquestionably one of them. Now, my take on Mr. Higgins, capital punishment, death penalty. And I'll tell you why. Okay, and I'll tell you one thing, they go out there and do a whole lot more overseas. They'll kill you out there. They'll execute you. You talk about how lenient things are a little bit in Canada, and the United States become a little bit more harsher. But overseas, they'll execute you. But I say capital punishment, death penalty, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But now we're thinking about, but in Florida, what can you do? We've had a guy, Nicholas Cruz, went out there and had a major incident over a Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and he pleaded his way out of the death penalty. And as a result, he got life in prison. We'll see how long that's going to stake until somebody ultimately wipes him out. Blows 22, thank you very much for popping in. Really appreciate you. So, but I'm saying death penalty. I'm not backing down on it. It's not like he killed one guy. Of course, one is too many, but he killed 2, and they were brothers. and they were riding bikes. Seriously, riding bikes, and you were still intoxicated. You know, no excuses. I say death penalty. But it's interesting how the three of us have what totally different opinions on it, which is why I wanted to bring it back for a new audience to go out there. All right, George, read Candy's information.
Okay, yeah. Police said that the driver, the 43-year-old Sean M. Higgins, was suspected of being under the influence of alcohol and charged with 2 counts of death by auto, along with reckless driving, possession of an open container, and consuming alcohol in a motor vehicle. Thank you, Candy, for those facts.
There you go. What else can I say? Death penalty, capital punishment. I'm not
Well,
ranting. I'm just saying I am not a nice guy. And if let me tell you, if the Gaudreau family heard me say this, I don't think they're going to be upset with me. I can tell you that because obviously it's unfortunate that these two brothers died, let alone the timing of it being so poor because the next day was their sister's wedding. And to compound the problem, now Meredith uh, Gaudreau is having their third child. I mean, please, what more does it take?
yeah. Well, just to clarify, I thought the question was, what will he get?
Okay.
But if you're
Well,
saying
that's all right.
what should he get?
That doesn't matter.
I mean, capital punishment. I know a lot of people that have been guilty of DUI offenses. They were a lot luckier than this guy, obviously, that didn't pull people. But 10, 12, 15 years, I think is what he probably should get. I think he'll get less than that. I guess we'll find out.
Well, that's okay. I don't mind you coming back on there and talking about what you do in Canada and then go out there and absorb what we're talking about, adding your input. That's not wrong with that at all. I think it's really good. Joshua Dorr, a friend of the show, Rod
Hey,
and the
Josh.
squad, what's going on? Well, you are Joshua Dorr. This guy here, is very loyal to the show. We appreciate you popping in. All right. You know what? We're going to turn over to Rod. You're going to give us the latest on the Florida Panthers. Okay, Rod, take it away.
Other than the Stanley Cup's been making a tour here through South Florida, I guess I haven't been able to tell you the stories. I'll tell you a few quick ones. That Phil Pritchard that you showed in the photo there, the keeper of the cup, is a longtime friend of mine. I think I met him at the 2001 Memorial Cup, which is Canada's junior championship. There you go, Phil on the right. The keeper of the cup is his Twitter handle and Instagram, and he said he will be in South Florida until October the 8th, the home opener, when the Boston Bruins are here, and we'll see the banner go up at American Bank Arena. I don't want to scoop myself here. A lot of that info is going to go in my column this week in the South Florida Tribune, guys. Some interesting stories from Phil Pritchard with, sort of how often does he clean the cup? How many countries has he been to with the cup? What are some of the wildest stories with the cup? So it's going all over. It's been at schools. It's been at police stations. There's that. Training camp is opening, I believe, the end of the week. And there will be no rookie tournament in Estero, Florida. There was last year. Serena and I went to it and had a blast. Nashville, Carolina, Tampa, Florida. There's a rookie tournament, but it's in Nashville this year. And we're not going. So that is actually, I believe it's next weekend. So time's flying, guys.
Yeah, I'd like to meet Phil Pritchard. If you can make that happen, I would certainly like to meet him, hang out with you, Serena, Candy, and we can have a little bit of fun. And who knows, maybe we'll bring him up as a guest on this show if he's interested. Bring him all over the place. But anytime, we can always bring on good guests. I certainly like to do everything in our power to give our audience the opportunity to meet new people as well.
And of course, I've met Phil many times in Detroit when it was just a routine. We'd expect him to be at Joe Louis Arena every season, it seemed like. So he's a great guy. Yeah, he is. And keeper of the cup. I love that title.
Well, I look forward to catching up with him. While we have a little bit of time, Rod, I'm going to let you go out there. And for the audience tuning in for the first time, I want you to go out there and educate people about the Cats and Bolts podcast and where they can find it, because I know you and Serena do a tremendous job on it. So for those of you that are listening to the first time or have gone out there and paid attention, Rod, the floor is yours. Talk about Cats and Bolts, what you've done in the past when you created it, and what plans you have going forward, other than the fact that I am looking forward to getting on there one day, whether I'm shaved or not. I don't know. Who knows?
This is my fourth season covering the Florida Panthers. And by the way, guys, Joel Quenville was the coach when I first got here. So think about that. That's been a
Okay.
while. This, though, is our second season with the Cats and Balls podcast. Serena Taylor, my wife, and I host the show. Last year, we won an award for the fastest growing podcast from Podcast Jackies here in Florida. All genres. So you can find it on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Cats and Bolts. The letter N. Cats and Bolts. Look it up. We have a lot of fun on there. Last week was our first show of the season, and we'll be doing it right up into the Stanley Cup final. Here's hoping the Panthers go back to a third straight. Florida is the state of hockey. Sorry for anybody that doesn't like that. 5 straight Stanley Cup finals have been in this beautiful state. We're calling it the state of hockey. And that's all you need to know. Cats and Bolts. You can follow my personal Twitter. You see @RodPeterson, my name on the screen there. Look it up. All the links are there to Cats and Bolts. We have a lot of fun with it.
And Rod and I have a lot of plans going forward. So for those of you that are just joining us, George and I, and Rod, certainly the three of us, and hopefully Serena will be interested in coming on, and we'll continue to add new wrinkles as the show continues to develop. Rod, he says, where's your cowbell?
It is packed up. I'm excited. He's talking about the daily Rod Peterson show that I have a cowbell that I ring basically when I get excited. So I ring it a lot. And just this week, gentlemen, I've rented a new studio. I'm moving into a new studio on Federal, and I'm excited about that. So my stuff right now is packed up, getting moved into my new studio for my daytime show. Joshua found me on there, and he's a regular viewer. For some reason, he likes it, just like this show.
I'm going to tell you, I've gotten to know Joshua. I know this guy back from our days at the Coral Springs Chamber of Commerce. And some people you get to know, and some people it's hard to do. Joshua and I, believe it or not, this guy used to live in my same community when him and his lovely wife went out there. And Rebecca, by the way, I don't want to really go crazy there. Him and his lovely wife, Rebecca, rented out here until they moved in Palm Beach County. And you know what? We've always had a lot of fun together. He's always been a good friend of mine. And, you know, there's no bigger hockey fan, in my opinion, in South Florida than this guy. I mean, he really is. He's passionate, certainly passionate about his Florida Panthers and all that, and more power to him. And I think what our goal is not only to reach the people in Florida, but this is a national broadcast, folks. Candy gave you the particulars. Even though certainly it is on Fire Up Florida, our goal is to attract all hockey fans, period. And as Rod and I and George continue to do more and more things, that's exactly what we're going to continue to do as this thing goes on. So, you know, when he finds something he likes to watch, this guy gives you everything he got, and more power to him. And more power to everybody that tunes in. You know, I just happen to, you never know if you're going to meet somebody, Rod, at Toastmasters or whether it's the Chamber of Commerce, and you find out who those hidden gems are that you bring on a show. All of a sudden, boom, you know, you got somebody out there that knows a lot more. So I'm always looking for people to come on the air no matter where you're at.
I need both of you guys to clue me in on something here, because we started this show in Florida doing hockey, the Cats and Bolts podcast. So we just felt there wasn't enough quality hockey coverage. And that's what, listen, the success of the show isn't anything we did. There was an appetite for it. Why, Scott, did you reach out to me? Because you said your audience wants more hockey coverage. And you're like, I'm busy enough. Would you mind doing the hockey? I'm like, I would love to. Now, where I grew up in Western Canada, our cable was Detroit. WDIV, Mort Krim, Carmen Harlan, Bernie Smilovitz, all that gang.
You know them.
Right, all of them. And it didn't look like the Red Wings were struggling for coverage at all. And I'm sure they're not. Right? There's Red Wings dedicated shows up there on radio and television. They got their full-time columnists. I was amazed. I'm still amazed when I got to Florida, the lack of coverage, and to be honest, the lack of hockey community.
Well, let me tell you. I'll take it a step further. Complete your thoughts. Sorry about that. I thought you were done, but go ahead.
Oh, that's it. Go ahead.
All right. Well, here's the thing. I brought on a guy by the name of K.R. Lombardia, who was a baseball coach when I was attending courses over at the University of South Florida. And when my former employer, the Tampa Tribune, you know, was absorbed by the Tampa Bay Times, there went the high school and prep coverage there. And so you talk about a void. And I mean, listen, I covered prep sports when I was at the University of South Florida, Rod, for a couple of years, 84, 85. And then, of course, I graduated in 86. So I can appreciate the fact that when you have a niche type of thing, like you do, you wonder why. But I'm going to tell you something. Florida's a tough market. The unfortunate disadvantage that you've had in the state, at least early on, is there was a fair amount of losing going on. And, let's say, face the reality, Rod. Florida is a very fickle market. It really is. But when you start winning and you start catching on, then they probably absorb to you, is what they do. I mean, who would have thought many years ago the Florida Panthers would build a new practice facility out in Fort Lauderdale by the Fort Lauderdale War Memorial Auditorium, where I covered boxing events. But they certainly picked a nice area. Me, I like the Ice Den because it's only 15 minutes away from where I live over here in North Broward County. So, I think I give you a lot of credit for what you and Serena are doing. I really do, that you guys went out there and threw your hat in the ring. And I think that when you continue to collaborate with other organizations, that's how you build the success off of one another. Let's face the reality. The thing I tell a lot of the folks that I work with is, if you work with me, you're going to end up on Google, because I'll tell you, we have a great relationship with Google. So as you continue to progress in the system, Rod, and let me reuse those words again, progress in the system, don't be surprised to Google Rod Peterson and all of a sudden we're connecting the dots of you and I, and then go up there and give me a response to that, hey, you know what? This isn't bad. It's only going to get better.
Yeah.
I'm a positive individual anyways, and that's just how it is. So,
well, we didn't start the podcast to be stars or for any other reason that we wanted to talk hockey, period. That was it. And people seem to like it, because I think people get into this business for the wrong reasons. I've always got into it because I like doing the job. And you guys have been doing it long enough. I think you know what I'm talking about, right, George?
Well, you guys, yeah, but don't forget, coming from Detroit, like you alluded to earlier, and Scott too, this is a, original six market. So, but I'm going to give hats off. Say what you want about the NHL and this and that, but the big experiment, let's call it, the Florida experiment, it's paying off big time now, big time. And you know what? I tell you what, and Dallas and we talked a lot about Arizona not working out, but LA to a certain extent did. But we're talking about two good, solid teams in Florida, like you said, the past half dozen to 10 years, even before that. So there is an appetite down there, and I'm so glad to hear that. You, Scott, and you, Rod, are helping, because there isn't a whole lot out there on the stations and on the airwaves and on podcasting. So that's great. Hockey is alive and well in Florida, and it goes and it shows with what you guys are saying.
Yeah, but all you have to do, Stanley Cup, these two franchises have won. That's all there is to it recently.
Right.
And I'll get into that another day. By the way, Blows says that Josh and the guys played with Shane Goss this year. Very good stuff. So, Shane's a pretty good player, and with all due respect, he certainly had a good year for the Wings. But I think the thing that's necessary that people in Florida have to understand is this, okay? You're building something not only on the professional level, but now you're starting to go ahead and build it at the youth level. Now, we've talked about this before, but I'm going to say it again, okay? The only reason hockey failed in Arizona, and even Wayne Gretzky couldn't even save it, okay, because you had poor ownership and no stadium, period. That's it. I believe that Arizona could have been a successful market. When you have bad ownership and no place to play, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, but you live there, so I'm not going to argue with you, but I'll say it again. Gila River Arena, which you and your wife have been at,
right,
is as good a rink in the National Hockey League. If anybody that's been there, there's 20 bars and restaurants within 50 feet of it. I'm like, how does this not work? 2/3 of the NHL markets would give their right arm for what the Coyotes have. I understand it was in an area of the city that nobody wanted to go to. I get that, but you can't say they didn't have at least a nice rink.
Well, I'm not. I'll tell you one thing. When Candy and I, my father-in-law, and my brother-in-law went over to that place, and what are these guys complaining? We paid tickets just so I could criticize these people for complaining about the rink. Said, are you crazy? Really? Come on. Let's face reality. It's not like you got an upgrade over at Arizona State University, and Phoenix Suns Arena was, to me, awful. I won't get into the history of my relationship with the Coyotes PR department, or not anymore. But the reality is they did have a good hockey rink. And yes, they had a shopping center right across the street. And if it's so bad, explain to me why the Arizona Cardinals are playing in a beautiful facility about 100 feet away.
And nobody bitches about where that is. It's right across
No, they don't.
from the hockey rink.
No, they don't. And here's the thing. Okay, the Coyotes had a chance to move to Scottsdale because I lived there at that time, and they tore down a shopping mall, and all of a sudden things found a way to get messed up there. But meanwhile, with all the money that they ended up getting towards the funding toward arena, they ended up improving the Cactus League and lured a lot of teams from Florida. So now you have 15 teams in the Cactus League, which is Arizona, and 15 in the Grapefruit League. So, yeah, tell me how bad it was. They had a chance to get in East Valley, but unfortunately, when you burn one bridge after the other, and I repeat, burn one bridge after the other, that to me is a recipe for disaster. That's why it failed. But Florida, meanwhile, I will say this: they started at the Miami Arena. Good place to start. I mean, hey, at least you had 15,000 people, even if they didn't spend a boatload of money at the beginning. But they used it as a stepping stone with at least 15,000 people. And I went there for a Miami Heat game, by the way, Rod. And then they ended up moving to this unbelievable arena that they're never going to leave. And I don't know what it's called. What, they change names every 2 seconds.
A Merit Bank Arena.
No, that's good enough for me. Yeah. Well, they always have a bank most of the time. I remember years ago when it was once upon a time named the National Car Rental Center. That's probably 5, 6, 7 names ago. But still, I mean, I can tell you right now, the Panthers found an arena. I love working in that arena, and I've gone on a lot of these shows here saying that it's one of the best arenas I've ever been to. A Merit Bank Arena. I better get used to that one. And if I don't, make sure that you go ahead and incorporate it in your stories, so that way you'll drill it in my head. So, I only revisiting the Coyotes thing is this could work in a southern warm weather climate. Vegas would be fine and all these other places. But Florida, you have 2 teams that started with different arenas. Okay, well, I remember when Phil Esposito went out there and brought it over there. I think it was at the Expo Center that held about 10,000 fans at the beginning. And I saw the Lightning play at the Thunderdome. I think they called it at that time.
I remember that name.
Neat. Yeah, and I remember that, which is, by the way, the same place as Tropicana Field, but they've changed the names a few times. And now the Lightning have a first-class place, and they're never leaving, and neither Panthers. So they got the arena thing figured out. And guess what? They got the Stanley Cups with it. What else can I say?
Well, yeah. Oh, here we go. This show will be the biggest show for SFT, and that is final. That's your final answer?
And you know what blows? If you keep saying that and you believe it, then you share this show all over the place between Cats and Bolts podcast and this. And Rod and I going on his show every once in a while whenever he needs me. Then I guarantee what you just said will be better than Joe Namath's guarantee when they ended up beating the Baltimore Colts in the Super Bowl. And I can't imagine how many people are really old enough to remember that one.
Their only Super Bowl win, I might add, in Jets history.
Right. Well, that's okay. Yeah. Blows 22. I retweet sure all the time. And you know what, Blows? Cheers to you, my friend. We appreciate it. Keep spreading the word. This hockey show was a result of you and Joshua Dorr wanting it, and we certainly brought it here, and I couldn't have found a better person to execute the task that we're doing. And Lowe says, as they say in the stock market, to the moon. All right, well, you know what? That's okay. The main thing you have to understand, Blows, is I'd rather go to the moon because I don't want to look like Saturn with a ring around my head here looking stupid. So that's not you, Blows. That's me now. So don't take it personal. Nobody's giving me a hard time, okay? But no, it's to the moon. I don't want to be Saturn. And, I don't know much about Spanish, okay? But there are a few words that I do know. I once dated a Puerto Rican girl who always said El Stupido. I guess that means stupid, but not that I really particularly care, because in the eyes of Ernie Harwell, she is long gone. All right, where did I go with that tangent? Don't worry about it. When you think on your feet, one-liners come faster than you can snap your hand and go through a broadcast like this. All right, Rod, go ahead. All right, well, here, let's go back to Blows here. All right, look at this guy. What did you miss? Watch it again on YouTube. Don't worry, it's all good. Nobody gave you a hard time tonight. Josh and the guys love hockey. We have been around the sport for a long time. Love this show with Rod. Of course, we're not going anywhere. Rod only figures to get better when we get done. And, of course, OG, George, Scott, he wrote a book. These guys are smart.
That's right.
I don't like stupid people in the chat room, and I got 3 good ones in there tonight. These guys are the energy of the show. All right, go ahead, Rod. Now that you have a word, now you have a chance to get a word in.
Take a breath, Scott, and maybe a sip of water.
Well, no, actually, iced tea works, but go ahead.
I want to hear the story of the sports exchange. Not tonight, but maybe at supper Friday night when we go out for dinner. I want you to tell me the story of the sports exchange with George.
Yes, please do.
I really enjoy George's voice. Now,
Well,
If the Red Wings are going to miss the playoffs and they make a trade, will you, Scott, make a public apology to Joshua that he was right after you going off 2 weeks ago or last week on it? Remember? Will you apologize if the Red Wings miss the playoffs this year?
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll own it. I have no problem with that. Why? What do you think? I don't own it if I make bad predictions? But they don't come here for me for predictions. They got people way smarter than I do. But if you're asking me for an apology for Josh because they didn't make it, I have no problem. I don't have an ego bigger than Mount Everest. I'm not saying he does, so don't take that the wrong way. Or Mount Rainier or whatever mountain. I have no problem. Hey, Josh, if the Red Wings miss the playoffs, all right, Josh, you were right. I was wrong. Okay, it's happened before. But if they end up making the playoffs and he's wrong, then you better rephrase that question about what Joshua Dort's going to do too. What I always say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So that's okay. And we have access to Joshua Dort because we're in South Florida. So Joshua Dort, I have no problem. Okay, if I'm wrong, I'll own it, and if you're wrong, you're gonna own it too. And we'll think of something that you're gonna own. So we'll keep this guy on pins and needles.
I was trying to stir it up, and as it turns out, quite unsuccessfully. Wait, so
well,
yeah.
Rod,
don't forget, it's Senator around Teroshenko too.
Exactly.
About being traded back to Florida, which we said is asinine. But that was a good Donnybrook last week, Scott. You held your ground very well. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, well, here, Joshua Dort says, I wanted the Wings to make it. Last year, wanted Shane to get in the playoffs. Sure, you played with the guy. You might as well. Okay, if I'm okay.
Oh, Shane.
I'm okay. I'm okay
player,
if I'm wrong, Scott. That's all right, Joshua. That's what it's all about, man. Shane, a.k.a. Ghost, all right. Not rooting against him. Good. So we're getting it out there. But Rod tried to do something, and unfortunately, the guy was wrong. He thought I was not going to apologize or didn't think I was going to twist. Let me tell you something, Rod. Okay, here's the deal. I don't mind owning it. I never pretended I knew it all. And when the time comes that I know it all, then I can promise you this, and I want to bring depth into this whole thing, but they won't be burying me underground. I'll be in a concrete nap in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That's where I'll be. Way above.
Well, we're all getting to know each other here on the program.
Unfortunately, though, Rod, sorry to disappoint you that you thought you had me. And guess what, my brother? I am not teasing this time like you might throw something under me. No way. I'll own it if I say it. And of course I have to. It's all being recorded. It's going all over the world.
Yes, sir.
It really is. It's okay. It's all good.
Great show, guys.
Yeah, these guys. Look at these guys. Let me tell you, Joshua Blows, D-Los, and whoever else is in here tonight. These guys are salivating tonight. They're not getting hammered. They're enjoying all the. These guys are absolutely doing a wonderful job contributing tonight and having a good time because when they salivate and they promote, these guys here are horses, man. They're thoroughbreds. They're not mules.
This should be fun. This business should be fun. There's a lot of people that try to take the fun out of it, and I'm not one of them. So I'm glad that everybody's here for the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take the fun out of it. I've been doing this too long. I've always had a firm belief that if it isn't fun, I'm not going to do it. Come on, Rod. Seriously, you don't know me well. But don't worry, before it's all said and done, you know what? You will. No, if it's not fun, you don't do it. It just so happens I can feel very good about the fact on every one of my shows, okay, that everybody has fun. In fact, on Inside the Pigskin, get this, you guys will like this, okay, that Coach John Bonamago went out there and started a chat with the 5 major regulars. I'm telling you, he did. I didn't do it. He did it. Okay, now they love it. So I say, hey, hey, listen, when you got guys on a show and they love each other, my God, or they have a good time with each other, that's what you're trying to build because, number one, they'll always be on every week unless there's an emergency. You can't get it. Stuff happens. Okay, but that's just how it is. So, that's what we're going to do. We're trying to build something here that from the ground up here with this show being more towards a hockey show. And maybe once in a while I'll throw in a non-hockey topic just for news, and that's it. Nobody has to comment on it just to keep up with the Fire of Florida. But there was a void, and thankfully I was able to find it. And I'll tell you one thing, this show, whether you got people out there know it or not, is being heard on iHeartRadio. So it's not like we're dealing with something that nobody knows, and Spotify, as you alluded to as well, plus YouTube among those, as well as our other social media platforms that Candy generally mentions it. So, so D-Lo's on my way to Lowe's to get a bucket from Will Vogel because I'm salivating so much. Yeah, okay. Will
Yeah.
Vogel's the guy we'll tell you about down the road. We love Travis on Picton. Yeah, Travis is a good broadcaster. And he started from the ground up, and all he did was improve. And he doesn't mind telling you that either. So, yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. It's about everybody having a good time. Keep it real. You know, we want to make sure the chat room is a pleasant place to come out there. We're not looking to go out there and throw anybody under the bus. And our goal is to make sure they always want to come back. But I have a responsibility, though, as the executive producer, George and Rod, to make sure that everything goes as structured so that way we don't go out there and go above the attention span for what people want. And our goal is to educate and inform and entertain. As long as people, and I mentioned that book, okay, Lessons from the Microphone. If you can do all of those, I think you definitely have a great nucleus to build something back. We all know Will Vogel is a pogo stick, Joshua, but I go out there and tell you one thing, my friend, okay? If you ever go on a show with him, if you mention that to him and you're friends with him, he'll message you. So, you know, you don't want to do that and don't want another Christopher situation. Cheers to you there, Josh. You're good. Sorry, we'll leave it alone there. But the main thing is that that's what we're all about. And obviously, I love the energy tonight on a lot of different fronts. And again, we have a lot more things that we're going to get to as time goes on, but I'm glad we covered a fair amount of ground. All right, one more time, Candy. For Rod and us, I want a picture of those Stanley Cups, and then after that, you can take it home.
Let the record show that George Eichhorn was with the Stanley Cup also.
Well, then send me a picture.
But typical George, he can't find the photograph.
Well, find the photograph, and we'll put it up here as well.
Okay, I will.
Like we put everything else of yours up as a columnist. Go ahead. And by the way, Rod Peterson is a columnist of the South Florida Tribune. It was officially announced today on Instagram that he is the newest columnist. Join myself, George, as well as a lot of the other people out there. Rod's had
congratulations, Rod. Well-deserved honor.
Yeah, and not only that, what I also do is I generate some of my ideas from Rod's stories. They're that good. So I may find one or two, and I'll bring them on, and I'll have a balance with everything else. So there you go, Rod, officially a member of the South Florida Tribune as an NHL writer. Put it out there. Glad we got around to doing it.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being a part of it, man. Tell Serena. Looking forward to getting her. We're going to get her involved as well. This show's only going to get better and better and better. Lifetime achievement. Let's go. All right. Well, with that said, with my voice here starting to show we're a little bit aware, and I have yet one more show later. Candy, take us home.
Okay, so South Florida Tribune published a book last November. It is called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by Scott Motor City Madmouth Morganroth, and the foreword is written by George Eichhorn. There's actually a picture of young Scott with young Muhammad Ali. You've got to grab the book to check it out. There's other pictures in there too, but I'm not going to divulge that. You'll have to purchase the book. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Apple, and Google Books. There's also a website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where all three of the gentlemen on the panel tonight actually contribute. So go to the website, read it, their columns, look at my pictures. There's actually a link to buy his book. There's also a link for our merchandise store where you can get apparel, whether it be a sweatshirt, a tank top, a hat, whatever you need, go get it. They have South Florida Tribune logos, or they have Motor City Madmouth logos. So go check it out today. There is our YouTube page. If you see the red subscribe button, that means you haven't subscribed to us. Please do so. Get updates on all the new latest stuff that we have going up there. Monday nights, we talk here. We talk hockey. After this, we talk baseball. Tuesday nights, we talk football inside the pigskin. Wednesday and Thursday nights, Sports Exchange and Fire Up, respectively. You never know what we're going to be talking about. Also, watch for updates. Scott normally does a one-on-one interview show on nofilter.net. Watch to see the latest one of those going up. Plus, you can always see our shorts. So we cover the Miami Hurricanes. So we have This past weekend, they took on Florida A&M. We have the interviews from after the game with the players and the coaches. So go check out the YouTube channel and see all the different content we have up there. If you'd like to get your podcast, you can go wherever you get your podcast and you can listen to any one of our shows. After that, I'm going to turn it over to George. Let everybody know how they can get a hold of you and find you.
Well, yeah, and Candy alluded to it under the South Florida Tribune website. I write under the Motor City Tribune, and that's a great, great area. I mean, me and Jeremy and Scott and Candy and all those great pictures we got and our connections to Detroit. And at the end of my column, you'll always see a link to purchase my book called Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. Oh, yeah, Candy's pointing. She's got a copy of it over there in the corner, yeah. And Scott's in the book. Scott and I have over 40 plus years together, and we've covered these guys like you don't believe, man. We're talking about the great Ernie Harwell, who wrote the foreword in my book, our dear friend, and we miss him every day, Scott. I know we do. And of course, so many others we've lost: Paul Carey, Frank Beckman, Al Ackerman, and Steve Dials. So many great guys in Detroit sports history. And Mr. Peterson, you know, Bud Lynch, Bruce Martin, George Kell, Ken Daniels, Dave Strader. What a wonderful litany of hockey announcers and broadcasters we've had in Detroit. There's a link to my book at the end of my column. You can also find me at gicorn@yahoo.com and on X, formerly known as Twitter, at SanGSports99, and of course LinkedIn as well. So like to hear from all of you. Enjoy being on these great shows. Fire up Florida and 108 Stitches tonight.
All right, George, let me ask you a question. Okay, number one, you forgot Ken Kell. I don't know if he's in the book.
Oh, he said it. He said it. I was listening. Kitty.
Oh, did you? All right, well.
Kitty, right? I heard it.
All right, well, never mind. Then I'm wrong, but I'll tell you what. I'm mentioning him again, so it doesn't matter. Ken Kell. They're all great. Paul Woods. Announcers are great.
Yep.
And let me tell you, the Panthers always had some good ones. So this goes to show you, if I make a mistake, I don't hear it, then it's okay. Number one, Rod, have you gotten a book yet?
No, I want a book. I want a sweatshirt. I want a hat. I want it all. So.
All right. Well, here's the deal, Rod. Okay, and everybody for the national audience to hear it. Okay, I'm going to get Rod a book sooner than later. Okay, but here's what we're going to propose. He's going to have to go out there and promote it hard, and he's also going to be. We're going to be trading him a book for current and future considerations. Isn't that how they describe hockey trades, anyways?
I thought, are they the only league that does that?
I have no idea, but I know one thing: hockey does it a lot. Maybe baseball does. I don't know, but basketball, they don't do anything. Not that I know of. In football, you don't worry about future consideration because they cut somebody if they don't want them.
Guys. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they just cut guys. So there you go. So Rod, we'll figure out the other stuff. You'll have to pony up, but that's okay. Well, you and Serena will hopefully help promote the book, and God willing, if I'm feeling up to it, which I plan to do, I'll write a second one for which you will be in it.
All right, guys. Great show. Appreciate it. Good luck talking baseball. Have fun.
All right. So with that said, that concludes this edition of Fire Up Florida. We will see you next week, same time. Good night, everybody. Thanks again, Rod. And as D-Lo says, stay dry over there, Rod. Good night, everybody.
Good night.